It started like most ordinary evenings. I was halfway through folding laundry when Jake walked in and casually mentioned Noah was coming to stay with us for a bit. No explanation, just, he's going through something. I told him he could crash here. I hadn't seen Noah in years, not since our wedding. Back then, he was the funny one in Jake's group, laid back, bright eyes, a little reckless. He walked in that night looking like a shadow of himself. Tired. Hollow. A duffel bag slung over one shoulder and something heavy behind his eyes. We made small talk in the kitchen. He told me Sophie cheated on him. 4 years together, and it ended with a text. He didn't cry. That made it worse. Jake excused himself early. Said he had a long day. He always does now. Sometimes I wonder if he even sees me anymore. The door closed behind him, and Noah and I sat in silence, 2 people orbiting the same absence. I offered him tea. He smiled, soft, grateful, and for a moment I forgot how broken he was. The next night, he found me in the living room reading. I offered him the blanket beside me, and he laughed. Said I always had a way of making things warmer. I didn't know how to respond to that. He wasn't flirting, just speaking plainly. We talked, really talked, about love, about loss, about how betrayal isn't always loud, it's slow, like rust. He asked me how you ever trust someone again. I told him you don't. Not fully. You just decide to keep going anyway. I didn't notice how late it got, or how close we were sitting. When I got up to leave, he caught my wrist, not forcefully, just enough to pause me. He said, "You don't have to fix me, Emma. I just needed someone who understands." I nodded, unsure what to say. My voice caught somewhere between sympathy and warning. He let go. In bed, Jake was already asleep. I stared at the ceiling and thought about how long it had been since he looked at me the way Noah did tonight. Not like I was responsible for holding everything together, but like I was simply there. Seen. That was the first night I realized how lonely I'd been, and how dangerous loneliness could be. The days that followed blurred into a strange routine. Jake left earlier and came home later. Noah stayed longer in the kitchen, lingered during conversations, laughed a little easier when it was just the 2 of us. We didn't talk about that night, not directly, but something shifted. He started reading the book I left on the counter. Then he asked if I had another. We began trading stories. Then playlists. I found myself wondering what he'd think of certain songs, if he'd understand the lyrics the way I did. Jake noticed none of it. Or maybe he did and didn't care. We barely spoke beyond logistics, groceries, errands, texts like "don't wait up." One afternoon, Noah helped me fix a stuck cabinet door. His hand brushed mine. We froze just for a second. I laughed it off too quickly. He didn't. He watched me the way someone does when they're trying not to speak something out loud. That night, we sat on the back porch with 2 mugs and too many unspoken things. He told me Sophie once said he was too emotional. Said it like it was a flaw. I told him feeling deeply wasn't weakness. He looked at me then, not just at me but into me. "You make it easier to breathe, Emma," he said, voice low, careful. I should have stopped him. I should have said something to create space. But I just looked away. The next morning, I found a note tucked in one of the books he borrowed. No signature. Just, "Thank you for seeing me." I read it 3 times. My chest felt tight. The guilt didn't come from what we did, because nothing had happened. It came from what I wanted. From the way I waited for his footsteps in the hall. From how I paid attention to what shirt he wore, what time he came back from his walk, if he smiled when he saw me. Jake mentioned he might extend his trip. I didn't react. I was too busy wondering if that note meant more than it should. That night, I sat with Noah again. Closer this time. Words came easier. His presence didn't feel like a guest anymore. It felt like an answer I wasn't supposed to have. When our fingers accidentally touched, I didn't pull away. I think that's when the lines stopped being blurry and started to fade. The night Jake left for his trip, it was already raining. He kissed my cheek, told me he'd call when he landed. I nodded, pretending to care. As soon as the door shut, the silence was deafening. Noah knocked gently on my door, holding 2 glasses and a bottle of wine. To distraction, he said. We didn't talk much. The movie played, forgotten in the background. Our knees touched once, then didn't move apart. The air between us was heavy. He turned to me slowly, eyes searching mine. I don't want to ruin anything, he whispered. But I can't keep pretending this isn't happening. I could have walked away. I should have. Instead, I leaned in. The kiss wasn't desperate. It was quiet, slow, certain. And then everything else followed: hands, breath, skin. It wasn't about revenge or passion. It felt like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. After, we didn't speak. He traced my shoulder with his fingertips like he was memorizing something temporary. I didn't stop him. Morning was colder. I woke up before him, watched the light shift across the floor, and knew something had broken. He reached for me, but I stood, pulled on my robe, and said nothing. Jake texted he was on his way home. I replied with an emoji. That's all I had in me. Noah was gone before Jake returned. No note this time. No explanation. Just absence. Jake walked in smiling, suitcase in one hand, phone in the other. Miss me? I said yes. Lied easily. He didn't notice. He never does. I made dinner like normal. Set the table, lit a candle out of habit. He talked about meetings and hotel food. I nodded at all the right moments. He didn't ask how my week was. He never asked. Later that night, I found Noah's toothbrush in the guest bathroom. I stared at it for a long time before throwing it away. My hands shook. I kept waiting for a message, a call, something, but nothing came. It wasn't just guilt. It was the realization that something I needed didn't exist anymore, and maybe never had. What scared me most wasn't what I'd done. It was how little I regretted it. When Jake reached for me in bed, I didn't flinch. I just stared at the ceiling and thought about how quickly we learned to pretend. Noah finally messaged 3 days later. Just 4 words, can we talk? Soon. We met at a coffee shop, neither of us ordering anything. He looked different, calmer, maybe, or resigned. He didn't waste time. I'm leaving town, he said. I need to start over somewhere else. I didn't come here to ask for anything. I just needed you to know. I'm sorry. I waited for the anger, but it didn't come. Just silence and a slow, hollow understanding. You didn't ruin anything, I told him. It was already ruined. We just stopped pretending. He smiled, sadly. Still, you deserve something whole. We didn't hug. Didn't promise to stay in touch. When he walked away, I let him. That night, I sat across from Jake at dinner and told him everything. I expected yelling, shock, anything but what I got. He just looked at me for a long moment, then leaned back in his chair. I know, he said. I blinked. You what? He nodded once. I saw his watch on your nightstand when I got back. I figured it out. Why didn't you say anything? He looked tired, older somehow. I was waiting to see if you'd be honest. I stared at him, unsure what stung more, his knowing or his indifference. He sighed. I haven't been faithful either, Emma. Emotionally, physically, take your pick. It's been over for a while. We just never said it out loud. Everything inside me felt still. Not shattered, just still, like a truth that had been sitting in the room for years finally spoke. We didn't fight. We didn't cry. We just sat in that silence, surrounded by everything we'd both let go of long before anyone crossed a line. That night, I didn't sleep beside him. I lay awake on the couch, eyes open, mind quiet. Not from pain, from clarity. In the morning, I packed a small bag and left before he woke. No drama. No grand declarations. Just a decision. I walked into the cold air and felt something I hadn't felt in years, weightless. Sometimes betrayal doesn't explode. Sometimes it dissolves in slow motion, hidden in all the things you stop saying. And sometimes, the real affair isn't with another person, it's with the version of yourself you forgot existed. I wasn't proud of what happened, but I wasn't ashamed either. Some endings don't need permission. They just need honesty. I didn't go far. Just a small rental outside the city. 1 bedroom, no distractions. The kind of place where silence is louder than traffic. I spent the first few days doing nothing. watching light move across the wall, eating without appetite, deleting texts before finishing them. Jake sent one message. "Let me know when you're ready to talk." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. We'd said everything in silence long before we ever confessed. The truth is, I miss Noah. Not the physical part. Not even the romance. I missed being seen. I missed the quiet understanding in his eyes, the way he listened without trying to fix me. But I knew reaching out would be selfish. Whatever we were, it was never built to last. It was a moment, not a life. I started journaling. Something I hadn't done since college. At first it was just lists, what I'd eaten, what I felt, what I avoided. Then came the real stuff. Anger, regret, relief. I wrote letters I never sent. To Jake, to Noah, to myself at 22, when I thought love was about endurance. One day, I bumped into a neighbor, an older woman with a kind smile. We exchanged names, talked about nothing, then she paused and said, "You look like someone who finally chose herself." I didn't know how to respond. I just nodded. Later, I cried without knowing exactly why. I thought about the affair often. Not with shame, but with curiosity. How something so brief could crack open a truth I'd buried for years. I wasn't a victim. I wasn't a villain. I was just someone who stayed too long in a life that didn't fit anymore. Some nights, I still imagine Jake walking through the door, asking me to come home. Not with anger, but with nostalgia. And in that version, I always said no. Not because I hated him, but because I finally loved myself more. Time didn't fix everything, but space gave me perspective. The affair was a symptom, not the cause. What unraveled between us had been breaking long before another man touched me. The scariest part wasn't leaving. It was realizing I should have done it years ago. Section 6. 3 months passed before I saw Jake again. It was at a friend's gathering. Mutual, awkward. He looked thinner. I couldn't tell if it was guilt or freedom. We spoke politely. Nothing personal. Just enough to prove we were civilized. Later that evening, he found me outside and asked if we could walk. I agreed, mostly out of curiosity. We didn't bring up Noah, or the woman he'd cheated with. Instead, we talked about the years between us. The good ones. The ones we both let go quietly while still living under the same roof. He said he'd started therapy, that he was trying to understand why he always kept people at arm's length. I told him I wasn't angry anymore, and I meant it. When we stopped walking, he looked at me and said, "I didn't know how lonely we both were." I just nodded. There wasn't much else to add. We hugged. It wasn't romantic. It was two people grieving a shared failure with dignity. When he pulled away, he smiled. "You look lighter." I smiled back. "I am." After that night, we didn't stay in touch. No friendship. No checking in. Just quiet closure. I found work with a nonprofit. HR again, but smaller scale. Less politics. More purpose. I started taking weekend trips alone, places I'd always postponed because Jake hated spontaneity. I read more. Laughed more. Learned how to enjoy silence without associating it with absence. One afternoon, I got a message from an unknown number. Just a single photo. A dog with mismatched eyes and a caption, "Meet Olive." No name. But I knew it was Noah. I smiled and deleted it. He'd found something good. That was enough. I wasn't the same person anymore. Infidelity didn't define me, but it woke me up. It forced me to ask who I was when I wasn't someone's wife, someone's escape, someone's anchor. The hardest part of starting over isn't the pain. It's learning how to stop waiting for closure and start creating your own peace. I still believe in love. I just believe in honesty more. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that breaking isn't the worst thing that can happen. Staying broken is. Sometimes, the affair isn't what destroys you. It's what finally sets you free. 3 months passed before I saw Jake again. It was at a friend's gathering. Mutual, awkward. He looked thinner. I couldn't tell if it was guilt or freedom. We spoke politely. Nothing personal. Just enough to prove we were civilized. Later that evening, he found me outside and asked if we could walk. I agreed, mostly out of curiosity. We didn't bring up Noah, or the woman he'd cheated with. Instead, we talked about the years between us. The good ones. The ones we both let go quietly while still living under the same roof. He said he'd started therapy, that he was trying to understand why he always kept people at arm's length. I told him I wasn't angry anymore. And I meant it. When we stopped walking, he looked at me and said, "I didn't know how lonely we both were." I just nodded. There wasn't much else to add. We hugged. It wasn't romantic. It was two people grieving a shared failure with dignity. When he pulled away, he smiled. "You look lighter." I smiled back. "I am." After that night, we didn't stay in touch. No friendship. No checking in. Just quiet closure. I found work with a nonprofit. HR again, but smaller scale. Less politics. More purpose. I started taking weekend trips alone, places I'd always postponed because Jake hated spontaneity. I read more, laughed more, learned how to enjoy silence without associating it with absence. One afternoon, I got a message from an unknown number. Just a single photo, a dog with mismatched eyes and a caption, "Meet Olive." No name, but I knew it was Noah. I smiled and deleted it. He'd found something good. That was enough. I wasn't the same person anymore. Infidelity didn't define me, but it woke me up. It forced me to ask who I was when I wasn't someone's wife, someone's escape, someone's anchor. The hardest part of starting over isn't the pain. It's learning how to stop waiting for closure and start creating your own peace. I still believe in love. I just believe in honesty more. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that breaking isn't the worst thing that can happen. Staying broken is. Sometimes, the affair isn't what destroys you. It's what finally sets you free.